Pizza Pennelli. I got a question for you kids. How many of you kids like to eat?
A lot. I like pizza.
Well, I see a lot of hands are going up over here. Let me ask you another question. What kind of food do you like to eat?
Pizza.
Pizza, that's my favorite. What other kind of food?
Macaroons.
What?
Ice cream.
Ice cream is a good one. What other kind of food?
Ice cream.
What other kind of food do you like?
Tacos.
Okay, that all sounds, that all sounds pretty good to me. I like
Did
food.
someone mention the food?
Oh, well, you kids, you remember him, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, this is my assistant, a macaroni.
Macaroni.
So, where's the food?
It's in the Bible.
Huh?
God's word. It's like a food. It's a spiritual food.
What does a spiritual food taste like?
Well, Mac, it's not like a physical food that we eat with our mouth.
It's not? I don't know if I'm gonna like it.
Okay, I'll tell you what. How about I tell you and the kids about physical foods in the Bible, and then I'll tell you about the spiritual foods, okay? How's that sound?
Now you're a-talking.
Okay, now let's just start it from the beginning. In the beginning, in Genesis. Now, kids, is Genesis in the New Testament or the Old Testament?
New.
One of you is right, and one of you is wrong. Which one is it going to be? Old or new? Oh, there, finally I got it. Now, in Genesis, chapter 1, it has the very first mention of a physical food.
God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of the tree, yielding seed, to you it shall be for food.
I like a fruit, especially apples.
Oh, yeah, me too. Now, on a side note, did you know, kids, that when you eat an apple, you really are supposed to eat the whole apple? The core, the seeds, and everything.
I always heard that apple seeds were poisonous.
Well, maybe if you ate about 3 or 4 pounds of them, it might be. But, in a small amount, it is actually really kind of beneficial. And besides, the horses can eat bushels and bushels of apples, and they eat them off seeds and all. And I've never seen a horse drop a dead yet from that.
I didn't know that. What other food is mentioned in the Bible?
Well, the next mention is again in the book of Genesis. And this is in Genesis chapter 9, verse 3 and 4. And this is what God told Noah.
Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat.
Blood? Ew! Only mosquitoes and ticks and the vampires that eat the blood.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Now, do you know, this is also mentioned again in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, that is in the Old Testament, kids, okay? And it's in Deuteronomy, chapter 12, verse 15 and 16.
Notwithstanding, thou mayest kill and eat flesh in all thy gates, whatsoever thy soul lusteth after, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which he hath given thee. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, as the roebuck and as of the deer. Only ye shall not eat the blood. Ye shall pour it upon the earth as water.
I thought there were things in the Bible that said we are not supposed to eat.
Well, that's all right, Mac. In the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, and it mentions all of the things that you can eat and what you cannot eat. But it's a kind of a long chapter, so I'm not really going to read it right now.
I just want to know one thing.
What's that, Mac?
When are we gonna eat?
Not the now, Mac. But you know, that question reminds me of something, though. Where do you think we get our customs of when we eat?
Huh? Oh, what do you mean?
Well, like breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah, all of my favorite times of the day.
Well, you know, the very first mention of breakfast, you know, it's actually in the Bible. It's in the book of Judges, verse 19:5, and it's a story about this certain Levite fella.
And it came to pass on the fourth day, when they rose early in the morning, that he rose up to depart. And the damsel's father said unto his son-in-law, Comfort thine heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way.
Sounds like they ate the toast for breakfast. So what about the lunch?
Well, you know what lunches are mentioned too. Again, it's in the book of Genesis. It's in the chapter of 43, verse 16. Now, this is a Joseph speaking. You kids remember Joseph? You know, the man color coat and everything?
Yeah.
Well, this is what happened.
And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, Bring these men home and slay, and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon.
Sound like lunchtime at noon, right? Amen, kids?
So lunchtime since then is at the noon, all right?
It's been that way for a long time, Mac.
So when do we eat dinner?
Well, some call it actually a supper, depending on what part of the country you live in. But it's pretty much the same thing. The most important supper, though, is in Matthew chapter 26, verse 20. And it's called the Last Supper. You kids all hear of the Last Supper before?
No.
Let's see what Matthew 26 or 20 say.
Now when evening was come, he sat down with the 12. And as they did eat, he said, Verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me.
Hey, I remember that story. Jesus was with his 12 disciples eating the Passover dinner. I mean, the supper. What do you suppose they were eating?
Well, you know, I'm not exactly sure about that. It was probably a fruit, some figs, maybe some lamb. More importantly, they had unleavened bread.
I remember when you taught the kids here about what unleavened bread is a while back ago.
Yeah, I remember. You kids remember when I was teaching you about unleavened bread? That was a couple of months ago. You remember the story about unleavened bread? Well, anyway, the Last Supper is where we get this ritual called communion. That's, you know, when Jesus was breaking the bread, and he said, Eat, this is my body, and he gave some wine, and he said, Drink, this is my blood.
Hey, wait a minute. I thought we were commanded not to drink blood.
No, it's just a symbolic act. We don't really eat his flesh or drink his real blood.
Oh, okay. But I still want to know. What else did the people eat back in those days?
Well, I'll tell you this much, they certainly did not eat a processed foods like we eat today. They ate wholesome foods.
Like what?
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's some examples. We already know that they eat a bread. But did you know that they also eat a butter? It says so in the book of Deuteronomy again. And is that in the Old Testament, New Testament, kids? Deuteronomy.
Old. Oh.
Very good. Very good. I think they're paying a little bit of attention here. Now, in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 14, listen very closely what he is saying.
Butter of cattle and milk of sheep, with fat of lambs and rams, of the breed of Bashan, and the goats with the fat kidneys of wheat. And thou didst drink the pure juice of the grape.
Wow, a butter, a milk, a lamb, a wheat, and a grape of juice. And I wonder, did you think that they had a grape of jelly?
You know, I don't know. But I do know this. They had a honey. In Genesis chapter 43, verse 11, it says so.
And their father Israel said unto them, If it must be so now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels, and carry down the man a present, a little balm, and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds.
I like nuts.
You know you are what you eat.
You're a little fruity yourself, there, Pizza.
Well, anyway, speaking of fruit, though, in the book of Samuel, the chapter 17 of verse 18, listen to what this is saying.
Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys.
Let's see, they had a bread, wine, lamb chops, corn, raisin, and a pigs. You know, I like a cheese with a Maya raisins.
You know, you're kind of weird. But you know, they did have a cheese back then too. Again, in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17 of verse 18, it says so.
And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000. And look how the brethren fare, and take their pledge.
Hey, what about a chicken?
Well, not exactly a mention in the Bible, but pretty close. In the book of Numbers, chapter 11, verse 32, he give you kind of a hint.
Stood up all that day, and all that night, and all the next day, and they gathered the quails.
I don't think I've ever eaten a quail. Is it any good?
Tastes like chicken.
I just might give it a try.
Yeah, it's a pretty good on a pizza too.
You know, I would rather have a sardines on a Maya pizza.
Yeah, that's my favorite too. Oh, you know what? That's another food I mentioned in the Bible that I almost forgot about. A fish. Did you know that? In the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verses 9 and 10, and this is what it says.
These shall ye eat of all that are in the waters, whatsoever hath fins and scales, in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. And all that have not fins and scales, in the seas, and in the rivers, and all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you.
What does those that have no fins or scales mean?
Well, it's like shrimp, lobsters, oysters, clams, and even catfish.
Catfish?
Catfish don't have scales, you know.
Hey, wait a minute. All of those things that you mentioned, you can buy them at the grocery store, so tell me what it gives.
Well, Mac, you gotta remember, these were Old Testament laws, and I will explain that a little later. You know, people back in the Old Testament day, they definitely eat a lot of meat, though. In the book of 1 Kings, chapter 4, verse 22 and 23, let's hear what he's got to say.
And Solomon's provision for one day was 196 bushels of fine flour, and 391 bushels of meal, 10 fat oxen, and 20 oxen out of the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides the harts, the roebucks, and the fallow deer, and the fatted fowl.
Did they eat ham?
No, that's a one thing. The Old Testament law was definitely a forbidden. And again, that's found in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 14, verse 8. This is pretty clear.
Because it divideth the blood swine, cheweth not the cud, it is unclean unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their dead carcass.
I really like a ham.
Again, Mac, it was an Old Testament law. I will explain this to you a little later.
But I want to know now. I'm hungry.
All right. Now, one reason that God gave us these dietary laws was to set these Hebrew people separate from the rest of the world. Now, some of the foods they had, maybe they didn't cook them quite properly. And you know what happens when you don't cook a food really good? You get a food poisoning. And that's not a good thing. You ever hear of salmonella? And plus, you know, they did not have refrigerators. And some of their food would be a couple of days old, and they could get harmful bacteria on it and stuff. And that kind of thing make you sick. But they wouldn't have known of this. So God gave them these laws to follow.
So, are we or are we not to obey God's dietary laws?
Okay. The answer to this question can be found in the New Testament, in the book of Acts. In Acts chapter 10, verse 9 through 15. Now, this is a vision that the apostle of Peter had. You kids remember the apostle of Peter? Shout amen if you'll do. I'm thinking they remember. Well, let's hear what this is going to say.
On the morrow, as they went on their journey, and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became very hungry, and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance, and saw heaven opened, and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at 4 corners, and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of 4-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again a second time, What God hath cleansed, that call not thou uncommon.
So that means we can eat whatever we want now, right?
Well, yes, but you know, we still need to be kind of wise in what we eat. You know, like when you get vegetables, you're supposed to wash them off and stuff before you cook them, as an example.
Yeah, I like vegetables.
Yeah, me too. How many of you kids like vegetables? I see one hand go up. I see 2 hands are going up. Well, what kind of vegetable do you like?
Salad.
Salad's a pretty good one.
I like salad.
You like a salad? What other kind of vegetable?
Broccoli.
Broccoli a good one. I like that. You like a carrot? How about a
I
squash?
like good broccoli.
You like a broccoli?
I like carrots.
You like a carrots too?
I like potatoes.
And potatoes. That's a good one too. I like all of them vegetables.
Tomatoes. I like onions.
And onions. I like onions. He's shaking his head of no over here. I don't think he'll like onions.
Oh, tell me now, what vegetables are mentioned in the Bible?
Okay, well, I'm glad that you asked me this.
I like tomatoes.
And tomatoes are good too. Now, in the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verse 16, now here's what it reads.
Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat, and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse.
I've heard the word meat, but I did not hear the word vegetable.
Well, actually, you did. But you did not know what the word meant. The word pulse means beans.
Oh, I love beans.
Now, here's another example. And this is in the book of Numbers, chapter 11, verse 5.
We remember the fish, which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic.
You know, I like a cucumbers and I like a melons, but I'm not too crazy about the onions and the garlic, though.
Well, you know, I know another food that you're probably not going to like neither. It's something that John the Baptist ate. Now, this is in the book of Matthew, chapter 3, verse 4.
John had his raiment of camel's hair and a leather girdle about his loins, and his meat was locust and wild honey.
I know what the honey is, but what's a locust?
Basically, a grasshopper's a Mac.
Ew, I don't think so.
Any of you kids that like to eat grasshoppers? I bet you Ezra would.
Nope.
Any of you kids that like to eat grasshoppers?
I remember eating a living spider and then a grasshopper.
I know he has swallowed a coin once.
Me too. Never.
Never.
Hey, now, what about desserts?
Well, I like the desserts too. You know, I guess that they may have had sweet cakes or something like that back in those days.
My favorite is an angel food cake.
Well, you know, angel food isn't mentioned in the Bible.
What's angel food?
Well, angel food is, well, I'll tell you what. In Psalms 78, verses 24 and 25, explain it pretty good.
Had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them the bread of heaven. Man did eat angels' food, he sent them food to the full.
You know, I wonder, what did that manna taste like?
I don't really know, but I do know that one thing, pretty sure, the children of Israel for 40 years, that's all that they had to eat. And then they got pretty tired of it and they complained quite a bit.
So, I guess we can eat whatever we want.
Well, like I mentioned before, we still need to use some wisdom here. Now, some foods are not really all that beneficial.
You mean like onions and garlic?
No, Matt. Vegetables like that really are kind of good for you.
You know, I've heard that some people say they don't eat any meat at all, just the vegetables.
Oh, yeah, the vegans.
Yep.
Now, some of them are kind of hateful towards the people who do eat meat. But you know what? I use a scripture for them. Actually, it's for us, too. This is in Colossians chapter 2, verse 16 and 17.
Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of a holy day, or of the new moon, or the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Christ.
So, what foods are not good for us? You know, I really want to know.
Well, it's not so much what or where the food actually came from, but how it is processed and prepared.
What do you mean?
Okay, here's something I need to tell you and the kids. You know, a lot of the store-bought processed foods that you buy in the store today, a lot of them contain a lot of harmful additives and ingredients like PHT, which is added to prolong the shelf life of the product. And I know that stuff will work really good. Now, this is a true story. Several years ago, I bought a loaf of white bread from the store, you know, the kind, you know, the white bread all smushy and real soft and that stuff. It had a list of chemicals about it, that alone. And I put it in the back of a seat of my van with all my other groceries. And I went home and I took all the groceries and I came and like, wait, where'd the bread to go? And I went, oh my goodness. I left with the bread at the store. So I didn't think of nothing about it. Now about 4 months later, I'm a cleaning out in the back of my van, and here's this loaf of bread. And I opened the thing up, and it was still fresh. It had no mold on it. It wasn't even hard, it was still kind of soft. Now what kind of chemical that are going to keep it like that are going to be good for you? So you got to watch out for that kind of stuff. And also watch out for the GMO, which is genetically modified stuff. Now, artificial flavors are not really that good too, and even artificial colorings sometimes have a chemical that are not good for you. You ever, here's a good one. You ever eat those Doritos that got that orange stuff on where the Cheesettes, that orange stuff, and you get on your fingers, you can't wipe it off? That's a food coloring. That's going in the side of your body too. And that same color, going to come out the same way. Now that cannot be a good for you if it's going to stay the same color.
Well, how are we supposed to know what foods have all that stuff in them?
Okay, now like I mentioned it before, every food or product today has a list of ingredients printed on the packaging. But you know, most of the people don't even bother to read them. For one thing, the print is so small you need a microscope to even read it. And even if you could read it, the words are like 18 letters long. You cannot pronounce. And if you can't pronounce it, means you probably don't even know what it means.
So, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it, all right?
Right, that's a good general rule of thumb. Here's what I always say. If a God made it, it's a good. If a man made it, it's probably not so good.
So what about that spiritual food that you mentioned earlier?
Well, you might have not known this, but you have been given some of that spiritual food all throughout this lesson. The scriptures that you heard a little while ago. That is a spiritual food. Now, if you don't get spiritual food on a regular basis, like coming to church as many times as you possibly can, you know what's going to happen to you? You're going to become spiritually anorexic. And that is a very unhealthy thing to do.
No.
What's that? What's the matter? What's that?
It's my stomach growling. All of this talk of food is making me really hungry.
All right, then. I get the picture. Well, let's get it back into the pizza parlor, and I'll make you a wholesome pizza.
Pizza is wholesome?
Well, think about it. Is it got a bread with a sauce made from tomatoes? It has a cheese, vegetables like mushrooms, olives, peppers, pepperoni, sausage, ham, even sardines, and onions and garlic.
Pizza?
Oh, what, Mac?
That all sounds great. But hold off on the onions and the garlic, okay?
Okay, that sounded good enough. All right, okay. His stomach is still aground. Okay, we better go now, because I got to feed at this point. Well, we'll see you next time we come around, okay?